Michele and June a couple of clean comedians who support each other and others through comedy's wacky and winding roads. I hope you're ready. Get set. Let's go. Since podcasts have a catchy tune, we wrote this song for Michele and June. Clean comedians are best friends too. Oh, it's so good. And you never know what they'll say or do. Here we go, sing with me. On my support, ort. With Michele, who's really short. We'll have a ball, with June, who's really tall. They have fun, interviewing comedians. On life support, ort. With Michele, who's really short. Now it's time to start Laugh Support.
The Laugh Support Podcast is brought to you by the Hot Breath Comedy Network.
Wow, give yourself a round of applause.
Okay, that's never going to get old. That's never going to get old to me. So,
yeah, I know, right? I got myself a booster seat today, so I'm about the same height as you. So,
you're not the Michele that's really short, just a little short today. Well, welcome to the Laugh Support Podcast, the award-winning podcast.
Woo-hoo.
I'm your host, June Colson, with the amazing Michele with 1L VanDusen. How you doing, friend?
I am well. I have like a cough today or like extra mucus. I don't know, because our weather in Oklahoma.
You can't start a podcast with extra mucus. Like, Michele. Ew. What? Who does that?
You almost spit.
I did almost spit my cough. We were about to have a spit take on the opening of our podcast. Listen, come on now.
I was going to say, because the weather, it was really cold, and then now it's warm, and it's going to be like freezing again and snowing tomorrow. Like it's bipolar. I don't know what's happening.
There's still no excuse to say mucus, okay?
But it's such a fun word. Mucus.
Yeah, that's a great word. Okay, listen, I know that while our break was going on, that you were watching like a lot of murder mystery or mystery type shows.
Yes.
I have a mystery I need you to solve for me today. Okay.
Okay.
Where did my trash can go? Like my dumpster. It's gone. Like when they picked up my trash, my dumpster was at the end of the driveway on Monday. And I thought my husband pulled it back up to the garage. My son thought I pulled it up. We all thought someone else did it. It's not here anymore. Someone stole a bright blue and yellow dumpster from the end of my driveway. Where did it go, Michele?
It's down the street and at the fourth house on the left.
Okay.
And you know it's that one because you wrote down the code that was on your dumpster. You wrote it down.
Yeah, everybody does that.
Yeah.
Everybody does that.
And you go down there and it'll match.
Yeah, it's right by all those passwords that I can't remember is the code to my dumpster. Seriously, it's gone. I text Jason, he's out of town. I was like, dude, where's our dumpster?
I took it with. I packed it. It's on the flight.
Like,
it was so
know.
easy.
And then I'm like, wow. Do we owe him money? Like, do we owe money to the dumpster people? And he's like, no, it's billed directly to our utility bill. So I don't know what happened. And and what stinks is if you ask them to bring you one, it takes them like 14 weeks to bring you a dumpster. It's insane. So anyway,
maybe today, it stinks. Oh.
Yes. So maybe in the future episode, we'll have solved that amazing mystery. But listen, it is no mystery that we have an amazing guest today. And I'm telling you, he's probably going to be super impressed by our opening song, because I know that in his podcast, it opens with a like Nashville produced professional song. And in comparison, well, I don't know. I don't know. I hope he doesn't feel insecure when he comes on here. I hope not. Michele, tell us who's on the show today.
All right. So based out of Nashville, Tennessee, Lee Hardin tours the country. He performs in comedy clubs, churches, corporate events. One time, we have to totally ask him about this. On a farm for prisoners. I need to know that story. In 2019, he was a top finalist for Jeannie Robertson's comedy, the competition that she had, Comedy with a Class. I don't know if you remember that. That was so good.
Yeah.
Also, 2019, his Drybar comedy special, Not Quite a Grown Up, was released. It is so funny. You have to tune into that. You can watch that on the Drybar comedy app. So he's worked with people like Henry Cho, Ryan Hamilton, Nate Bargatze, June Colson, and
Oh,
last
yeah.
year
Whoa.
even me. Yeah, I know. Like this guy is rocking it. He's performed on the Mike Huckabee show, and last week, get this, he was in Bolingbrook, Illinois. It was just a few blocks from my old house. So let's
Wow.
welcome to the Laugh
That's
Support
amazing.
Podcast, Lee Hardin. Woo, 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 woo.
There he is. There he is.
Hey, what's with me being guest number 35? Did you run out of people? Like, is that
No,
I
not
was
at all.
I was
Not at
counting
all.
I was
You're
counting
actually
the
40. No.
See, well,
great.
what we
I
had
was
we had to
counting the
get the
guests
nerve
and
up.
I was counting the guests and it went from 35 down back to 31, 32. I was like, I can't keep count. They're going backwards in the intro. What's going on?
Oh man, we had to listen. There's just certain people that we wanted to wait until we had this thing well oiled, until we had an
Uh-huh.
amazing intro song. Like we didn't want to look foolish in front of the great Lee Hardin, right? So, and Michelle, you said it. You said Hardin. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah,
There you
I almost added the G on there. I was so close. So
Yeah.
close. So
Yeah.
Most
woo!
people do. That's okay. It's all
Well, and
right.
for the record, we didn't have guests on every one of those episodes. There was a lot of episodes that was just Michelle and I, and we had a few people, bounce in here and there throughout the first season. So
So
yeah.
you'd rather not have me than have a guest. I see. You just had to.
No, that's
Okay.
Well, what
No.
I heard, every time that June was trying to request you, she kept messing up the calendar dates. Like she's like, "Hey, you want to do Wednesday?" And you're like, "No, I'm open on a Thursday." And then like it just never matched. So no,
Yeah.
we had you like scheduled for like the first week,
Right,
but
right.
because Wednesday, Thursday was just kind of just not going the right way, we just we had to wait.
That's
There
all
it
right.
is. There
all
it
right.
is.
Nah.
So yeah, so Lee, were you super impressed with our opening song? Was that
Oh, yeah, it was awesome. You had lyrics. I know you talked about my song. I got a couple of words in my podcast. It's the Lee Hardin
Listen.
podcast. He likes too many things. That's all the lyrics I wrote for that. So
Ooh, I could
No,
do
it's-
that. I can remember that song.
yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a good one. So you do have so real quick, you do have a podcast. We just brought that up. It's called the Lee Hardin Podcast.
Really creative. Yep, I know.
Yes. And it is super cool. I've listened to several episodes, and it really is one of those where it's a variety of things, right?
Yeah,
Tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll get into the laugh support stuff.
Oh, it is simple as all get out. It's because the lyrics speak for itself. He likes too many things, so I like way too many things to talk about just one topic. I don't. If I do talk to comedians on the podcast, it's never about stand-up comedy. It might come up, but Rick Roberts, as we all know, he was on the first episode.
Mhm.
We talked about the Andy Griffith Show because we both love the Andy Griffith Show. I've had pro wrestlers on the podcast.
Mhm.
That's been fun. Just whatever I'm into. Athletes, pro athletes have been on there. Pro athletes / like actors. The guy who was he was an extra in the Underdog Story, the Kurt Warner movie. He was actually the guy that sacked Kurt Warner in the movie. His
Nice.
name's Sam Dobbs. He was the devil in the Match.com commercial from 2020. I don't know if you remember the big jacked up devil guy that matched with the girl on the commercial.
Yeah.
But that was him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so how many guests have you had
I've been
so
on there.
far, Lee?
Who's been on there? Michelle?
No,
I've
I
been
said,
on there.
have you been on his podcast?
Yes, I have.
Michelle, really?
Yes.
Really?
I
Yes.
didn't know about that. That's weird if I don't
Well,
know
tell
you're
us,
on my own
Michelle, how's it?
podcast. That's
Well, I
I
was asking, how many guests have you had?
This much.
not I think maybe 10 or 11. I've
Oh, okay.
the last couple of weeks I've been bad about doing an episode every week. And you got to be week to week, and I've been very bad about that. So all 10 of my listeners, I'm sorry. I will work on making more episodes, and I need to just do episodes of myself if I can't get a guest. It's about consistency, and so full disclosure, I'm bad about being consistent with the podcast. I love doing it. I'm just bad about being consistent with it. So
Gotcha. So you're at least 10 guests in. So sometime around guest 35, maybe Michelle and I will be invited onto the
Well, let me clarify. I count my name being mentioned as a guest. That's all I'm saying.
There we
Oh,
go.
That's
That's
all I'm
true.
saying.
I
So,
did mention
you
you
know,
on an episode. Yes, I did
There it
do
is.
that. That's
yeah.
true.
So,
Yeah,
I've been on.
if I get to episode 35, who knows what the streak I'm going with right now. So in 5
Well,
years, maybe I get to episode 35, I'll have you on, and then I'll backtrack to 32. That was the funniest thing about the intro. It was counting, and then it went back to number 20 after 30. I was like, how are they British? How are they counting
yeah. No,
this?
I feel like, Lee, you've been around me long enough that should have made sense to you. That's how it works. But
Oh,
listen, okay, so on your podcast, though, seriously, what is crazy impressive, Michelle, is like Lee is wicked smart. Like when he says
Yes.
he likes too many things, it's not just like a surface information. Like when he's talking to his guests, the things that he knows about so many things, it is like it's truly impressive. I don't know that I would know that much about wrestling and that much about music and that much about Andy Griffith. Like literally, I think your mind is a trap, Lee. Like you truly retain, like you straight up retain a crazy amount of information.
lots of very useless information, which I'm fine with. I like it comes in handy for the podcast. So when you
Well,
when you
and for
just
your comedy.
yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
When you grow up watching TV and doing nothing else, it comes in handy. So
There it is. There
I
it
am
is.
a
Well, listen, we
well
are
my
the laugh support podcast, and so we do dive into just basically, you've been doing comedy for a long time, obviously accomplished. You've worked with a lot of different people, but we like to jump back to kind of the beginning when you first got into comedy and you were trying to figure out your way through this crazy world. You know, who was there for you? Who was your laugh support? Who are the people that kind of come to mind that you go, man, yeah, they helped me straight out of the gate?
for helping me with stand-up comedy,
Mhm.
I think we could all say like Rick Roberts. I wouldn't have taken a comedy class if it wasn't for Rick, and if didn't take a comedy class, I probably wouldn't have did open mics because I respected comedy too much to think I could just wing it. And some guys can, and I hate them because they're so naturally
Oh,
funny.
yeah.
Like they don't have to prepare as much as like they can just be naturally funny on stage, like a Sinbad. And I know Sinbad worked his tail off, but he's just so naturally funny.
Mm,
But yeah, I respected the craft too much before I even knew there was a craft. And guys like Rick talked about how to write a stand-up comedy joke and the types of comedy jokes and what to avoid and all the homework that we got into. It was eye-opening. He showed you the engine of a car and told you got to build the rest of that car type of thing. So
mm.
Rick, and then non-stand-up comedy, probably my buddy, best friend Brent Gambrell. He's a traveling minister, does a lot of stuff. He's not a stand-up comedian. He calls himself more of a humorist, but he's
Mm.
been a guy that I have always been around, and one of the funniest guys I know. Can do all these characters just off the cuff, and just super funny guy. And I he's not afraid to be silly, and it's always making me laugh, even after getting into stand up comedy, because you don't laugh as much as you used to after you start writing stand up comedy and
Right.
telling it. But he's a guy that's always can still get a laugh out of me all the time. So yeah, definitely Rick Roberts for sure. So, and we all, we're all part of that tree in some way or form. All three of us. So
Yeah, he's definitely a name that gets that's been brought up, by so many people, so many comedians that are in my life, and friends of mine we had him on our New Year's episode and just kind of talked
Mhm.
about, how he has been there and he has done that. So as far as taking a comedy course and learning about that, there's a lot of people who think that's you shouldn't have to do that.
right, right.
So what is your thoughts on that?
Whatever works. I mean, you can't. I don't know. I've heard Seinfeld talk about you can't judge process. I mean,
Mm,
some people it's probably not good for. Other people it is. I felt like for me it was like so. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't judge process. Whatever's gonna get you on stage. whatever's going to inspire you to write jokes. And yeah, I can't speak against it. I mean, if people want to have their own opinion about not taking comedy classes, I'm sure they have their reasons. It may like stunt the way you develop material about yourself. If you're wanting to write jokes the way somebody else writes jokes, I can see that side,
Yeah.
but you know, and a lot of those people probably live in areas where you can get on stage a lot more, like in New York or LA, where you can get up and learn more about yourself all the time you spend on stage. So, I try to see all sides of arguments, and I can see that side. But yeah, at the end of the day, you can't judge that process. I don't think I'm still figuring the comedy stuff out myself. I don't, claim to know the right way to do things, but yeah, whatever's going to get you on stage and get you to write and make it fun for a crowd, do whatever that is that gets you to do that. So very vague, I know, but
I know. I love that. I love that premise of you can't judge process. I've never heard somebody say that before, right? Like Michelle, your process is a little different than my process, and so yeah, like what are your thoughts about that, Michelle, as far as like the classes and things and different
Well,
people's
like
processes?
the one thing that I'm actually really curious, Lee, is like, why did you just decide, like, just one day, did you just wake up and go, oh, I need to take a comedy class? I mean, did you have some kind of interest in comedy ahead of time? Because I
oh
know,
yeah,
like, I started and I was like, "Oh, I don't know enough, so I better
Mm,
go listen and maybe I can learn
yeah,
something." And then
yeah,
in my process of trying to learn something, I realized I have no idea what I'm doing, and now this is a horrible thing. Why am I doing this? Then every time I stopped trying to do it, another thing would pop up like, "Oh, but that's really funny." And then I'd
yeah.
write that down. So what what was in your head? What was your thinking of, "Oh, I'm going to go take a class?"
I mean, I was always obsessed with stand up. I always
Mm,
wanted to do it. I didn't know how. I didn't know you start and you're famous right away. I didn't know. And if it was on TV, I was watching it, even at a young age when I could comprehend what was going on. I felt someone was on stage on TV, like with a brick wall behind him. I loved it. And Louis
mhm.
Anderson had a thing he hosted all the time, late at night. And I can't remember if it was on after SNL or the Tonight Show. I forget, but he was always on. Yeah, it was some sort of showcase, and he was always on it. And that's where I kind of first heard Louis Anderson. But yeah, I was always trying to be funny, and I was a failed class clown. People will ask me if I'm a class clown. I'm like, I tried. No one liked it. So, but I
That's
kept
funny.
doing it.
That needs to be the name of your next special.
Failed
Failed
class clown.
class clown.
Yeah, did you go to
Failed.
clown college? No, not that. I was trying to be funny and never worked. So, um, but
That's so good.
yeah, I would still search, like, when I was an adult working a job. I saw Zany's taught a class, and I'm like, oh, that'd be fun, and I just avoided it. And then a good friend of mine who is back home in Canada now, he basically forced me to take the class. He knew I was thinking about it. He knew I was a silly guy, and he's actually the guy that sings on the podcast that I have. He's the
Oh, nice.
vocalist on that. Yeah, Francie. And so he offered to take it with me, and so that's what sparked that. And then I got the homework, and I'm like, "Oh, this is awesome!" It was the first homework I ever cared about. So,
Mm.
and yeah, I got way too into it, and I lost a couple of friends. I'll be honest. By trying jokes on them all the time that I was
Ah.
writing. Yeah, yeah. So it got bad, but I kept doing it. So
It can be though. I so relate to that because it can be something that I mean, it's the thing that you love the most and you're excited about and you want to do it. And I learned early on, like my family would just be like, "Oh, here she comes." Like,
right,
oh, just this one more thing about comedy. And that became the people that you go, yeah, well, I can't be running my stuff. beside, with them. And then fortunately, I was able to, to find the group where I met and got to know Lee. We've been hanging out in Tennessee together with a bunch of other comedians off and on for the last 2.5 years. And
you drive a lot, by the way. The fact that you drive from Kentucky to Tennessee to try some jokes out with friends, that's I thought I drove a lot, but you do that on the you'll drive state to state like often. So
yeah, absolutely. But it's not happening in my back door. There's not a group of people here that I could learn from. And much like you, I am somebody that I took Rick's courses, and I wanted to be able to do it and do it well. And also I'm 150 years old when I got started. So I'm not like a 20-year-old girl who's like, oh, I got all the time in the world to figure this thing out. I'm like, I'm probably, my life expectancy, who knows how many years I got. So I gotta get in there and I gotta do it right. But you've definitely been a huge support. Not long ago, Michelle, I was telling Lee, like, there's a few people in comedy that they help you like feel like you're better than you are, and they never make you feel like you're less than. Lee's given me opportunities to do different shows. The first time that I was given the opportunity to host for the first time, we were doing a little show in Tennessee. There was a comedian in town that was going to be on the Huckabee show, if you remember, Lee. And he was like, hey, I'm doing this show. And I was like, oh, cool. And then, 10 of my family members showed up, and that was pretty much the audience. Yes, Lee, that was my live support. It was just me and my family. We're like, oh, no, nobody else is coming.
Yeah. You're not an Italian and you're not a gypsy, but you've got family pops up everywhere like you are Italian. Like they show up. I don't know how you have family here and there, but they come from the woodworks and we have a crowd. So that's amazing that no matter where we're at, June's got family that will show up. Yeah. So thanks to Hot Dog. So
thanks to Hot Dog. They're here, there, and everywhere. But Lee was somebody that I didn't feel like, well, I can't ask this guy because I'm gonna look stupid, because Lee's been around me enough to know she can be pretty stupid. So,
no.
I was able to say, like,
that is true.
Like, what are thanks, Michelle.
You're welcome.
We may have gotten a fight right before this thing started, and Michelle's just gonna take it out right here. And I was told to shut up, Lee. She told me to shut up. But anyway,
I would never use that word. Never use those words ever.
Mucus. You would just use the word mucus, but not shut up.
Mucus but not shut up.
Those are elementary school cuss words. You can't say shut up.
They are.
I've heard kids cuss in elementary school, but if you say shut up, the room gets silent, and you're like, "How is that worse?" What the?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
but
that was right after she called me a duty head. That was right after she called me a duty head. That's fine.
Now you're lying.
Okay, but back to Lee being in my live support. He literally like just I was able to just go, hey, I haven't hosted before. I kind of have an idea in my head how this goes, and he just gave me like some, maybe 4 just short, quick pieces of advice before I bounced in there, and kind of just the gist of like, this is what your this is what your goal is, and to keep it moving and keep the energy up in the crowd, those kind of things. And so I've been fortunate to to be able to have several different events, Lee. So just to take a pause and a moment to like publicly say thanks for never making me feel like a less than, because most of the rooms I go into, I am the least qualified person in that room. Like, I don't have the experience of everybody who's in that room. So that can mess with your brain a little bit. Even if you feel like you're equipped, and even if you feel like you put in the work, when you're in a green room and everybody's like, hey, Bob, how long have you been doing comedy? 47 years, and you 15, and you da-da-da. And I'm like, well, I have 1 solid year under my belt when there wasn't a pandemic. So,
right.
So there it is. But okay, so you've given me great advice. Is there someone or a piece of advice that someone gave you, doesn't even have to be early on, just period, that you find yourself continually kind of going back to that piece of advice, going, that's just something that I do in comedy?
Sure. I mean, I've heard like, it's never one guy that said the same thing, or it's never been like one guy that said this one thing. I've heard plenty of people just say, have fun. It's basic, but It is true. I tried to live that these past couple of weekends where I'm like, okay, who cares if your jokes are old? These people don't know you. They're not going to care if these jokes are maybe 5 or 6 years old. Have fun telling them. It'll be a fun show. Connect and tell the jokes you know. And that's what I was trying to do. And I think it worked. We had a good time both weekends where I was at. I tried to apply that. So it's a simple rule, but have fun. I mean, yeah, you want to try new jokes and throw them in there, but don't worry about I got to do a whole new hour, because the reality is, like, if you're not really famous and people don't know all your bits, it's not the biggest deal in the world. If they
Mm.
work, they work. So, and I'm sure there's comedy legends and pros that would speak against that. If you can write a new hour in a year, like a Louis C.K. or Chad Daniels, awesome. Some people can do that, but have fun. Who cares if your jokes are old? And then a long time ago, I think it might have been a year into like doing open mics. Nate Bargatze was at Zany's, and I was just asking him a couple of questions, and his big thing was trust that you're funny. Again, pretty simple, but you got to trust that you're funny to get up there. Because you've probably met a lot of comedians. And I've gone through this too. Even before a show, you're like, I'm not good at this. I'm not funny.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of self-doubt. Even if you've done some cool stuff, self-doubt can still haunt you. So trust that you're funny. Have fun. Trust that you're funny. Those are probably the two biggest things. And it's and they're simple. Like, simple, but sometimes hard to apply, really.
Mm-hmm.
So
Michelle,
That's
do you
so
feel
good.
that? Do you have those moments where you're having a hard time relaxing and having a good time, or believing that you're funny?
Every day, every day. So, yeah, those that's actually that's really great advice, because going back to those two foundational things there about having fun when you're with the audience, and you know to help combat the self-doubt, know and trust that you are funny. I mean, that's right there. That's key. I mean, thank you, Lee,
Mm,
for, sending that out to our audience, because it is important. And the thing is too, is you've also done the work, because you took
yeah.
the class, you did the homework, you wrote your jokes. And I'm curious, what when you're writing your material, when you write your jokes, what is your inspiration when you're writing? Like, did you pick things from your life? Do you just look at observation stuff? Like, what what is like the core of your comedy?
I don't know if there's a one set of inspirations. I mean, it's if an experience happens, write it out. I mean, like 2 weeks ago, yeah, it was 2 weeks ago. Someone hacked into my comedy page, and the problem is my fan page grew after they hacked it. So I'm like, they're doing a better job at being me than me. That's like, and I just had to write that out, and then it's a real experience. Write your reaction to it, and there's a guy that teaches called Killer Stand Up. I forget his name. It's a course you can take. It's just
Mhm.
his own
Steve Roy.
little philosophy on joke. Yeah, he talks about jokes just being reactions. They may not
Mm,
be funny on paper, but if you tell it, it can be funny. That's his
Mhm.
philosophy. But yeah, just your reaction to crazy experiences like your comedy page getting hacked and it growing. And I can't make that up. That really happened. And
mm,
I just told that off the cuff at CD's last weekend, and added the line that, and I added that line because someone inspired me to in the comment section, because I talked about it on Facebook, and I was like, yeah, it's like someone stealing your identity and your credit score going up. Like that's how I felt. Like, and they reacted, and it was like, all right, I got something new. So experiences, don't write down your crazy experiences, because you may not have a line yet, but keep writing down reactions, and they may not be funny on paper, but it could be funny when you actually tell it, because when you tell that premise, you got to get the crowd interested. It's like waves in the ocean. I mean, you gotta pull those tides in for a little bit and get them in, and if they're invested in that premise, then you can almost get away with saying anything at that point as long as it makes sense. But before that, like when I took Rick's class, I was just writing jokes for the sake of jokes and being clever. And being clever will get you by the first couple of weeks of doing open mics, but after a while, people go, "Well, that didn't really happen to him." And okay, I get it. He can do a magic trick. Okay, cool. He can do a little gotcha joke. That's great. You gotta evolve from that. And I was frustrated because I thought, oh, I'm clever. I should be funny. And clever doesn't always mean you're funny. And so, yeah. And that's the big hurdle I've been trying to get over forever with stand-up is it's almost like the biggest compliment you'll get or I'll get is good writing. And you're like, oh, does that just mean I'm just a good writer and that people just see what I'm doing? Am I just saying things that are funny compared to being funny while I'm saying them? That's been a huge hurdle. So yeah.
So what I'm hearing is you are encouraging people to start a journal, basically, to start writing their reactions to things. So for the females, that'd be write a diary, right? Keep a daily diary.
Yeah.
And for the men, keep a daily journal, right?
Do girls still have diaries or?
I think, listen, I was at the airport the other day and I saw a man with like a leather bound, and it was 2000, it said 2022 diary on the front of
Wow.
it. And this man was just frantically writing, and I'm talking like the size of a binder. And he was just, so, I mean, he didn't mind having diary written on the front of that. That's what he was doing. That's what he was doing. I was like, okay, interesting.
Indiana Jones had a diary, so it's cool.
This is true.
That's right.
This is
New
true.
product in the back of our room, you know.
Yeah,
but product.
There you go. But journal, whatever. I mean, your notes app, just if it's an experience, like at least write that experience out. You can always go back to it. And how can I make this funny? Sometimes in a situation where I'm writing, I'll ask myself, what's the dumbest thing I can say in here? When you watch sitcoms, people are the star of the show is always getting themselves in an embarrassing situation,
right?
And not like dragging yourself through the mud, but putting yourself in a situation of utmost embarrassment. And a lot of that comes with making the dumbest decision or saying the dumbest thing you can say. So, yeah, again, everyone's got their own different process. So
right. I think emotions, I heard somebody say, before, just emotions reach out to people. And so I always try to pay attention, not even to just what was funny that happened to me, but what was embarrassing or what scared me, or, like if it sparks a major emotion, then I'll try to kind of, write it down and eventually roll with that, So
yeah.
I think if it sparks that in you, it might spark that in somebody else. So
absolutely. And take it to the stage. And if you need to make it tighter. If it's funny as is, cool. Again, there's not one way to do this. So
right. Well, listen, Michele, what a great guest today, don't you think?
Yes. And it's so funny and full of wisdom. And I really appreciate all the insights and the advice that you really just laid out there for everybody. Thank you, Lee.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm still figuring the stuff out too. So,
I think we all are. I think people that I've met that've been doing it forever are still trying to figure it out. People who are starting are trying to figure it out. But what's cool is that, there are people like you that will open yourself up to people like me, Michele, and others that go, hey, well, let's figure it out together. So that's
absolutely.
that's truly laugh support right there.
Yeah,
and we appreciate that.
If you keep working at it, it can get you on a farm.
Yes.
One day for prisoners, and because I know Michele mentioned that.
Yes,
earlier,
I wanted to know the story. Yeah, you got to tell us off air. I have to know the story on that.
Is it in your Drybar? Is that in your Drybar?
No,
not
that's
in the
not
Drybar. Okay, well then here's the deal, Pickles. You just got to follow Lee Hardin. You got to find out where he's at, and maybe you'll catch that story. I've heard it.
Well,
I've heard it. It's pretty awesome.
It is on the Huckabee Show, so that you know,
Oh,
That's
okay.
right. That's right.
yeah,
That's right. Well, y'all check Lee Hardin out at leehardincomedy.com. That hasn't been hacked. It's really him. Drybarcomedy.com/LEEH. And he is on Twitter, Instagram at Lee Hardin Comedy. So you guys definitely go check out Lee Hardin. Hopefully soon you'll have control back over that Facebook page. It is what
right.
it is, man, right?
But they're doing great at it, and
Yeah.
now I'm apparently a video game designer.
Oh,
And
wow.
so
Ooh, nice.
yeah, and there's videos of goats smoking on the page now. Like,
That's some talent there. You're a goat
Yeah.
trainer. Way to go.
That's comedy, though. That's comedy. You
Yeah.
take the stuff that's tragedy or drama, or because realistically, like, this is a problem. This is a problem in Lee's life right now. It's not something that's positive, but the joy of comedy is that that's how we can cope with it. We can at least look at that angle and, pull the gold nugget out of it.
I've reported it to Facebook, and they're like, it doesn't go against our community standards. I'm like, stealing accounts doesn't go against your community standards? What?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wait, there's
Oh, my
goats on
goodness.
there? Is it Ed Wiley? No.
It's not Ed
Yeah.
Wiley. I
Yeah.
wish.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Well,
I
Lee,
wish.
we absolutely appreciate you being on here today. Y'all listen, Live Support Podcast. You can find us on Captivate FM, Amazon, Apple Podcast, Audible, Spotify, Player FM, and others. And if you want to see our pretty faces and all the cool guitars that are in the background of this episode, because Lee is also an extremely accomplished musician, which
Yes,
is
he
pretty wicked
is.
awesome. You have to check him out. You can find the Life Support Podcast on YouTube, the Creative Motion Network on Roku, and say the last one, Michelle.
Vimeo.
I say it wrong every time. So y'all, thanks so
Vimeo.
much for listening to us. I am June Colson. Jesus and Junebug loves you. And Michelle, tell them goodbye.
Goodbye. Guys, thanks for listening. See you next time.